Hey everybody, Andrew Kordick back with another Email Never Sleeps. And my special guest today, I think you're going to enjoy because our topic is called Why is Mastering Email Marketing Like Catching a Unicorn? And that's interesting. And I've got Evan Blittner with me. He's been around a long time. Evan, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, and then let's just jump into the topic.
Sounds great. Thank you, Andrew. So hi everybody. I have 16 years of experience as a marketer or strategist. I've worked at agencies and client side, even vendor side, very early in my career. So going into my experience, just a lot, last 12 years, very heavy focus on CRM, lifecycle marketing,
Yep.
specifically with brands across multiple industries, telecom, insurance, finance, and of course, one of my best experiences was CPG. But
Yep.
anyway, just a variety of experiences, and
Nice.
also hospitality. But that was, it was fun. It's just
Totally.
it's more than bits. If you're agency side, sometimes you do, projects and you're on an account for a short period of time. So it's hard to like
Yeah.
narrow in your focus when you've been in so many places. But that's why I feel like I've had a wide breadth of experience.
You're what I call the trifecta, right? I've been in the email trifecta, right? Agency, client, and vendor side. So for those of you that don't know the trifecta, that's what it is. So let's talk about mastering email marketing and why it's like catching a unicorn. And I'd love for you to say, like, what is the unicorn? Like, why did you use that term? What is the unicorn to you?
A unicorn is simply something that is shiny, beautiful, amazing,
Right.
represents everything you want it to be,
Yeah.
and it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You're saying that mastering email marketing, doesn't exist? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Like that's hard to understand, right?
Well, I think you can master areas of email marketing, and I know we're
Yep.
going to break that down.
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah.
you can master certain parts of a life cycle journey
Mhm.
or a campaign or a
Yep.
test. Of course you can.
Yeah.
But you master holistically from the second someone gives you permission to communicate with them, all
Yeah.
the way to winning them back if they lapse. Can you master that every aspect of it? I don't think so.
Yeah.
And the simple reason is because it's a moving target. There is so many, and we'll get into it, but there's so many components to it, from
Mhm.
internal parts to the
Yep.
to the actual experience that customers wind up getting.
100% agree, right? Someone always asked my opinion on preference centers, and I'd say preference centers change over a long period of time, right? And so
Mhm.
customer preferences change, your data changes, industry changes, internal stuff changes. So what would you say is the is where does somebody start, right? Like how when you start talking about like channels that are involved or data that's aligned or whatever. Let's talk about the top line, right?
Yeah.
Experience and strategy. What are your thoughts on that, and how would you advise or what do you want to talk about when it comes to top line or strategy experience?
Yeah, of course. And I think every industry has its ins and outs of utilizing research,
Yep.
utilizing a customer's journey in terms of primary data, first party data, third party data, and the messaging itself, right? How deep does your segmentation go? Does messaging certain customer types really make a difference? And how nuanced do you need to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then let's back it up a second. You have to understand your whole journey, and you have to have so like first and foremost, if you want to try to aim towards mastery, you
Yep.
need buy-in from the top level. Leadership needs to buy in. If you
Yep.
don't have leadership buying in, you're going to find yourself working on bits and pieces of the journey, and you're never going to connect it all.
Yeah, and that's important. When we start talking about journey, everybody, I think that's where sometimes people get confused or mixed up.
Oh yeah.
And what I mean by journey is where does it start? What do they do? what's their problem? What are you trying to solve? And how do you get that information? Like you said, primary research. I don't know about some of you, but like when I was consulting big time, I went in and I listened to customer service calls, inbound customer service calls. I actually read people when they responded back to emails, thinking that was somebody there to read. You have to understand the problem, and then you have to understand when they sign up, right? When they start giving you permission, like you said, where
Hmm.
do they go? What do they receive? How often do they receive it? In the timing, right? And that's part of taking a step back and understanding what initially happens. And what do you see from brand's perspective, or what do you see as a significant challenge? You said getting buy-in. I agree, but I also think it's getting buy-in from all the other people that have to be involved and
Oh,
where email touches, right?
I completely agree. Just start with the top down. And then you really do need to go through like stakeholder interviews and get a pulse of where everyone in the organization is.
Mm-hmm.
That,
Mm-hmm.
that varies from, all the way down to different departments, whether you use most likely you use a third party ESP, most
Yep.
likely you have a CDP that's also third party, or you're using your combination of technologies to make it almost like a CDP, like a Salesforce.
Yep.
Um, but then beyond that, you have to also understand, your technology, your IT team. Like, can they keep up with you? Do they
Mm.
understand the problems you're trying to solve? And then beyond that, of course, the marketers themselves.
Right.
How
You
are
know,
they how are they comprehending its value of email and in general its role? Some people see email, there's all different variations and flavors of it.
yeah.
Um, and like, I don't want to go off on a tangent.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
tend to do that easily.
Yeah.
But I've seen, certain industries see it as solely like a branding tool at times, and
Yeah.
so see it solely as a transactional kind of experience, and obviously everything in between.
One of the things that you and I chatted about when we were setting this up, and you made an interesting point of, how is your attribution being measured, right? And a lot of the times email marketers, CRM marketers get together, and really the only attribution is revenue. And
Mm,
I'm going to disagree on that, because I think attribution happens at different cycles of the individual that you're trying to reach, right? So how is your attribution being measured in the beginning, in the middle, and maybe towards the end, right? And those attribution measures probably are look a little different in each life cycle stage of people, and where they're at. And so you guys listening, right? I mean, I think this is important to note, is you shouldn't just have one measure across all of your different segments, across all of your different things. And yeah, revenue is going to play an important part depending upon what vertical you're in. But you need to have a really good measure in addition to the journey. And I remember I did a study once where it was a 150-day journey. I looked at emails across a brand for 150 days and found out that 75% of them were not stuff that I signed up for. In fact, it was completely opposite, and I was receiving almost 8 times the amount of email than really what I thought was going to get. And that takes time, right? So when you start out, and I know we're in the beginning, right? But when you start out doing this stuff, it's not like it's a wham bam, we're done in 2 weeks type of thing, right? It's a long tail journey to figure this stuff out. And I'm sure in your experience, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like it takes a while.
to get a pulse of where there's gaps and where you can certainly
Mhm.
improve upon the contact strategy, whether it's, as you pointed out, giving the customer what they're seeking, if it's a preference center as an example, or if it's just simply deeply understanding the customer better, right?
Yep.
Maybe you have a brand that happens to have 10 plus products, and you can actually tell by the data that there's
Mhm.
interest in three or four. Well,
Yeah.
then you should tread lightly on the other ones, even if they are
Right.
revenue generators. It doesn't,
Right.
they're not going to convert most likely.
Right. Um, we touched on testing in our pre-calls, and you said it solves many pain points because there's a lot to test, but it makes it almost impossible because you need to do iterative testing, right,
Mhm.
around a couple different things. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on testing.
Yeah, I think so. Testing. So let's just say you either, are just inheriting a
Yeah.
program, or you now rolled out an
Yeah.
improved version of a contact strategy. You have your different places. You're
Yeah.
never going to be perfect. And
Yeah.
so that's part of the enigma, right? No matter how much you chase greatness, what's going to happen is ultimately you're going to find areas to test. You're going to break down something. It might be an automated stream, and you're going to be like, wait a second,
Yeah.
this has been here for years. Maybe we should test this. And ultimately, I've come back to, as much as I love testing multivariant headlines and all kinds of details,
Yeah.
it's always been my experience that subject lines seem to get the most improvement, because it just trickles down. It just
Yeah.
makes sense. More people open an email, well,
Hmm.
then you're going to get more overall clicks. Maybe
Yeah.
you're not going to get the better click to open rate, but does that matter if you generate more revenue? Not really. Or whatever. Or wait, and to Andrew, to your point,
Yeah.
maybe that's not what you're trying to get them to do. Maybe you're just trying to get them. Maybe it's like a rewards program, and
Yeah.
you're early in the journey, and you just want them to sign to either activate or simply, for example, add more not points, get points for their given their preferences. Like what they like to do or what they're interested in. And so in those instances, again, if you could get more people to open,
Mhm.
and then ultimately more people to convert, that's the name of the game.
Yeah, and a lot of people struggle with, where do I start from a testing perspective? I mean, the testing drum has been beaten for many, many years. I know I've done it. And a lot of people struggle with not only just starting, but continuing.
Mm.
And I've created a testing template here at iPost, which has stood the test of time. And it starts slowly. It gets you addicted to testing. And I remember, you're able to sort of draw like what's next, and then know what is going to be the most influential from a testing. I wrote a white paper on the couple stages of testing. And that's why when you kind of get into it, it's a however long you stayed in an organization, right, folks, you're going to just be testing the entire time. And we're not talking about daily testing, right? I mean, don't go bananas on testing and learning and stuff like that. But there's this hypothesis that you have to form. And then, whether it's a once a week test or a once a month test, or even a long tail test, right? I did testing for 6 months on a confirmed opt in email. It's not an immediate thing. And we, as email marketers or CRM marketers, we get instantaneous gratification, right? When we send emails out. And oftentimes we have to let sort of stuff marinate, sit, right? And before you sort of learn. We start talking about the difficulties and the stage of the life cycle. And you had mentioned this in an email to me. And they are, right? Acquisition, cross sell and upsell, retention, surprise, delight, win back. Pick one, Evan. Pick one and tell me where that difficulty that someone would have in those acquisition, cross sell, retention, surprise, and win back. Where are the difficulties in doing that? And then I'm going to pick one.
Okay. Um, I mean, I've done a lot of acquisition, so I'm going to actually challenge myself on the fly, and I've done retention as well. But
Okay.
I'm going to go with retention, and I guess because there's components to it.
Mm.
Retention, in some ways, is more of a challenge because you have to think through the different customer types and the different pain points you're trying to prevent, the
Yep.
friction. You're
Yep.
trying, and as a marketer, sometimes you can't do much, right? Maybe you can educate somebody on a situation that helps ease their concern about a product or a
Yep.
service, or maybe you can do something to improve their experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all part of what it entails.
Mm-hmm.
However, it becomes challenging to measure it sometimes. And it also becomes challenging to go to management and say,
Yeah.
this is what I'm really doing. And
Yeah.
then I'll just add one component to it. Holdout groups really become, at least in my experience, a real challenge to sell out, to sell to upward, to sell to leadership, because
Sure.
people don't like holdout groups. And so if you're saying, hey, like I'll give an example of something without getting into too far that I heard once.
Hmm.
Uh, you have someone returning for a service every year,
Yeah.
and you offer them, if you offer them a certain promo, you know that you're going to get more, right?
Yeah,
More people returning.
for
However,
sure.
maybe there's a case for a holdout group. Maybe you're offering too many people that.
Yep.
Now, how do you justify that for when your annual revenue might be 30% from email that year?
Yep.
So that's why it becomes a real challenge in many different capacities.
Yeah. That's a good point, right? And I've only known of all the organizations I've ever worked with or worked for, I've only experienced two organizations that were in favor of holdout groups, which is interesting, right? And you're smiling because you know the challenge, right? At least to sell it, because there's this notion of not only just kind of carrying through that holdback group, but the challenge leading up to convincing people that it's okay to do. I'm going to choose Winback amongst some of these different things, and I'm going to use a quote. I'm not going to claim ownership of this. It was my former creative director when I owned Trendline. His name is Alex Williams, owns his own agency now. You can't wake up people the same way you put them to sleep. And so
Hmm.
when we start talking about win backs, right? Um, Oftentimes there's this line in the sand that's drawn by CRM marketers. I don't care if it's 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, 6 months, or whatever. Oftentimes we begin win backs too late.
Hmm.
And there's this notion that the way to win them back, if you're, if you're B2C or an e-tailer or whatever, you win them back with a special discount, right? Let's
Hmm.
send everybody that hasn't done this in X number of months a new promotion, or let's send somebody an incentive to re-sign up to be a part of our subscription service, whatever that case is. What we don't look at as professional marketers is sometimes it's okay to start interventions or win backs earlier. I
Hmm.
like using the term intervention, whether it's early, mid, or late term interventions. You should really sort of think through that. Now, think about everything else you're doing, folks, right?
Yeah.
From acquisition to regular marketing emails to cross sell to what you just said was retention and then surprise and delight. I mean, your head just goes boom, right? Right.
Sure.
So that's where we're talking about, it's really hard to get into this. So I would ask for everybody that's out there is take a step back and focus on one area of your program, because you can't focus on everything. You really can't. Focus on one area of your program where you think you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, so that when you can sell what the next thing is, if you have to senior management, whether it's a win back strategy, whether it's an acquisition strategy, you're armed with data to go to those folks and say, hey, this is what we did. This is what we want to do next. We need X number of budget to do it. So start earlier than you think when it comes to win back, because I honestly believe that we wait too long, and by that time they're off, right? That's a recipe. And I think I heard a stat one time that only like 3% come back on a win back. I have no idea if that's true or not. I really don't care. I think that you can increase those stats because it's a lot easier, like we've always said, it's a lot easier to kind of deal with the people that are already there than to try to go get new people.
I, I,
So
I really agree. That's a
yeah,
good point.
so we obviously haven't touched on everything, Evan, right? Based off of our time. And that's why this is really, really hard, everybody. This is really hard to be an email marketer, although oftentimes we don't have that seat at the table. We don't get the biggest budget. So what would your two or three key takeaways that you'd want everybody to walk away from this podcast and go and try and do, or at least start to do in their organizations? What would you say?
Yeah, I think ultimately, I think taking away some of the key points that we put out here for different parts of the journey, win back retention, as we just covered. I think another key thing is I know I hit on it, but I'll just say it again.
Yeah.
Um, if you can avoid getting in the trap of looking at just email metrics and looking at results from email, and if you can revisit things holistically and work with your data science team sometimes to go
Mm-hmm.
deep into your primary data and maybe find something that really changes the game,
Yeah.
that can make a huge difference rather than just being in your, I guess what I would call your bubble where you're playing with what you already have in your sandbox.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All great points. And I'm going to say this, whether you're 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, or 10 years into your role at your organization, there's always something you can do to iteratively improve your program. Being complacent in areas like how's my acquisition, what's my journey in the first 20 days, to focusing on this, that, or the other thing. The only way marketers are going to feel, or email marketers are going to feel better about their role, either outside of their organization or inside of their organization, to get street cred, so to speak, is to prove your worth, right? Through trying to iteratively innovate, or and document and keep track of your attribution, so that you can feel like you're getting more and more out of the program. Don't feel stuck. There's a lot to do. You're never going to do everything, folks. Um, Focus on what you can change, um, and just know that when someone shows me on email, on LinkedIn, or tells me I'm an email master, I'm like, no, you're not. No one's an email master, right?
Yeah.
It takes time, and you've been in the business long enough. I've been in the business long enough to know we are students. You're a student. I'm a student of this craft, and it's going to keep changing no matter what. Whether there's just some huge innovation, right, around email, this is always going to be something that I think we have to continuously improve upon. And,
Totally agree. Consumer behavior just changes over time. So,
absolutely,
so that's going to change no matter what.
absolutely. Evan, any final words? Anything you want to leave for our audience, or what?
No, Andrew, thank you again. This has been great. I really appreciate it, and I hope that everyone enjoyed our podcast here. And
Yeah,
love email, and anytime you want me back, I'm here.
for sure. And just like I say to everybody, every single podcast, we're going to put Evan's deets out there to contact him on LinkedIn. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to engage with you. You can learn from his experience. Evan, dude, it's been great. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with me. And everybody, thank you for your continued support of Email Never Sleeps. I really appreciate it. Until next time, keep emailing, but try something new. Innovate. Do something different next week than what you would have done this week. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you again, Evan, and we'll see you on the other side.